Have you ever been stuck in a cycle of overeating? You start the morning off great, you have a nourishing breakfast, great portions, you feel great through the morning, lunch rolls around and you manage okay. But then by afternoon, you're starting to get hungry, you're starting to get munchy, you see yourself going over to that snack cupboard, maybe more times than you had intended. And then dinner rolls around and you eat a really heavy, large portion and you're feeling totally disconnected from your body, totally disconnected from your intentions, frustrated, right, and out of sorts with how you wanted the day to go and how you actually ate and how you feel. If this sounds familiar, I've been there too. I have been there too. And what I want to do is teach you the skills that I learned years ago and that I still use today to break this cycle, to stop this cycle of overeating. These skills can be an off-ramp for you to get off of that cycle and back on track to your health goals. And so that's what I'll teach you here today. So I have been in that place. I have been in that place where I felt totally out of control, right? I've had a lot of intention, maybe moments of really great control and restriction, and this is how I'm going to eat. And then it sort of unravels and derails, right? And I'm totally out of alignment with my health goals. I thought I needed more control in those moments. I thought I just needed more self-control, right? I was so great for all this time and then it just sort of unraveled and what happened, right? I guess I just need more self-control. But the reality was that drive to control and that drive to make things be a certain way was actually making it worse, right? That drive to control was driving deeper disconnection from my body, which led to deeper disconnected eating, okay? So and guess what? Even after all these years, I still find myself in that position today. I still have those moments where I'm eating in response to stress. I'm eating in response to fatigue. I'm eating in response to disconnection, maybe in relationships, nothing to do with physical hunger, right? And all those moments are cycles and patterns where I am in that overeating loop. And in fact, even as recently as Monday, I experienced this exact thing. Okay, so this is what that looked like for me. So Monday, I was starting to come down with a cold, so my body's starting to just feel a little bit worn down, run down. I had a lot of tasks at work that drain my energy, right? So my body is starting to deplete. Afternoon comes around and I am hungry. I am legit physically hungry, so I go to get a snack, right? Amount that I know usually will fill me up and sustain me to dinner. But in that moment, it wasn't enough. And so I found myself going back again and again, right, to eat a little bit more, a little bit more. And every time I'm going back, I'm disconnecting a little bit more from my body and from my experience because at this point, I'm not actually hungry, right? I'm not actually hungry. And so the food is doing nothing for me. And it's a mismatch in needs, right? I don't have a physical hunger. Something else, some other need is manifesting, and I'm trying to use food to meet that need, and it's not working. And so I'm digging in deeper, and I'm just eating more. And the more that I eat, the more I disconnect from my body, because at some level, I know it's not working. I know it's not helping. And in fact, I know it's making it worse because now I'm starting to feel uncomfortable, right? I'm starting to feel sluggish and full, and maybe even starting to feel a little bit guilty because this is not how I intended to eat. It's not how I want to eat, right? I'm overeating now and starting to feel that guilt, right, of being out of alignment with my health goals. So now I'm at a decision point, right? Do I choose to keep digging deeper into this hole of disconnection, or do I step out of that cycle? And I can tell you I've done both. And years ago, what I would often do is sort of dig deeper, right? And just dig deeper and deeper and just kind of stay in that place of disconnection until I found these skills, right? These skills became that opportunity, that off-ramp for me to stop that cycle and step into a new one. It took some time, right? It took some practice and it took some awareness of what those skills are. And so what I learned is that when I choose to break that cycle of disconnection through reconnection, it changes the game for me. And I learned that it does take some skills, right? It's easier said than done. And there is a skill set and a process to make it successful. And so that's what I want to teach you today. So the first step, the first skill is just to begin to notice, what are your triggers, right? What are your triggers that signal that there's a mismatch in the need versus the response, right? So for me, some of the things that I began to notice is when I'm going to that snack cupboard, again and again and again, right? There's a point where I kind of know that this is more than I actually need. And so I'm looking for something that this is not giving back to me, right? The other kind of closely related signal that I noticed was that if my hunger just feels like a black hole, right? This endless pit that I can feed and feed and feed and never feel satisfied. When you're truly physically hungry, you should notice the satisfaction and the meeting of that need. And so if you're eating and eating and eating and not finding that place, that point of like satisfaction and like you've had enough, there's a sign that there's maybe a mismatch, right? So noticing what is it a certain type of food that you eat? Maybe it's eating in front of the TV. Maybe it's eating really fast. That's another signal for me. If I'm starting to eat fast, it's usually a sign that I'm eating with some disconnection, right? So notice your signals and your patterns. A lot of the time this does take, right, the cycle to sort of run its course and then some reflection after the fact. Okay, so be patient with yourself as you learn your patterns and your signals. Okay, so that's the first one. Step 2 is to reconnect. Reconnect into your physical experience, because when we're eating with this disconnection, what we're disconnected to is our physical experience, right? We're disconnected with our body, usually going up into our minds, into our thoughts, or going into doing, right? I'm doing and I'm thinking and I'm not feeling, right? Those are kind of two separate activities. And in fact, in your brain, the areas where you engage in that thought process and thinking are different, physiologically different than the areas where you experience sensation. So coming back into connection with your physical experience sort of switches that, right? Out of the thinking, out of the doing, into what you're actually feeling and what you are experiencing. So for me, an easy way to do that is just with a breath. I take a deep breath and I notice the sensation as the air enters my body and as my lungs expand to receive the air. What does that feel like? Right? And I just really notice it and it drops me down deep into my body right away. Right? And once you're there, you can then start to notice, what else are you feeling? What other physical sensations are present with you in that moment? Okay, so that's the second skill. The third skill, or the third step, is so important. This is really, really important because, the third step, let me just tell you, and then I'll tell you why it's important. It's compassion. We need to hold this place of connection in a container of compassion. Because one of the things that drives us into that disconnection is that we're not very kind to ourselves, right? And if you think about any external relationship that you have where that person doesn't treat you well, hopefully that's a relationship that you avoid, right? That would be a healthy response, to avoid those relationships where somebody is a little bit of a jerk to you when they're not kind to you, right? That's not a relationship that you should seek out and want to be with. And that's true for ourselves too, right? If we're not kind to ourselves, we begin to avoid that connection, right? We do avoid ourselves, right? And that drives us more up into our brain or into doing, right? Because when we drop down, we're just mean, right? We're just mean to ourselves. So building that skill of holding compassion and holding curiosity right as you drop down into your physical experience is really important so that you can deeply connect. Compassion and curiosity. That is the container that we need for this to be successful. That's step 3. Step 4 is to now attune to the need, right? So now I've dropped into my body. I've got a container of compassion so I can be fully present, right? I've got a good, healthy relationship where I can experience what I'm feeling. And now I can attune to the need. So for me, what that looked like, right, is I fully attuned. I noticed my body is just exhausted. Right? I'm physically so tired. I'm drained from work. I didn't know it at the time, but I was coming down with a cold, right? The weekend had been a little bit of an exhausting weekend. And so now here I am and I have to transition from work into parenting and I have to make dinner and I have to parent, right? And so this exhaustion just doesn't see a way out. It's just like I have to transition from this into this. And so if I can use food, maybe it will get me through that, right? This is kind of the thought process that my body is engaging in. I'm so tired. And so if I can just get some food, maybe I can get out of this tired trap. And it's not working, right? And as I drop into tuning into that need, now I can really meet the real need. Food's never going to help that. What I really need is just a minute to rest, release, and relax. I'll get to the parenting, I'll get to dinner, right? But I just need a minute to relax, to rest, to really address the need that was presenting itself in that moment. right? And so that's step 4. And step 5, the natural sort of next step, as I kind of already said, is to meet that need. We need to get in the practice of meeting our needs, right? Of meeting our needs, of being our own caretakers, attuning to those needs and meeting them consistently. And so that's the 5th step. And once you have attuned more accurately, you can meet those needs more fully. So those are the steps. Notice your patterns, practice connecting back into sensation, cultivate compassion, tune into the real need, and then practice a consistent pattern of meeting those needs. So now here's the question, right? So those are 5 steps. It takes time, right? It took me a lot of time to build these skills to where now I can step into them pretty easily. But the way to begin any new process, right, is not to jump full in, right? That can be too much and too overwhelming and lead to failure and burnout. So what we want to do is find the easiest on-ramp to change. What's the one thing that you can take from this to begin to practice today? So that could be just beginning to practice that breath, right? To drop into physical sensation and practice noticing physically what you are experiencing. It could be just practicing compassion. It could be inviting in that kind voice into your system, into yourself, right? Just whatever it is for you that feels like the easiest on-ramp, commit to that today. If you try these skills out, they will change your relationship with food. They will change your relationship with your body. They will change your relationship with yourself, and they will stop that cycle of overeating so that you can really build that life of health and well-being that I think anyone that I've ever talked to really deeply wants. And so try them out. Comment below. I'd love to hear what you want to try today. And I promise you that if these changes worked for me, they will work for you. I was so far removed from any of this when I began, felt so sort of hopeless and like I could never ever even imagine a life of self-attunement. And I promise you that if I could build it, you can build it. So try these out. Comment below what one thing, what on-ramp you want to try to begin to cultivate these skills and these practices. And then don't forget to click subscribe for more tips on how you can cultivate a life of health and well-being, connecting into your natural body wisdom. Thanks so much for being here. I'll see you in the next video.